All right, today we're going to take you on a journey deep into the heart of one of South Africa's most powerful and, let's be real, underrepresented music movements. This isn't just a story about music. It's the story of the Xhosa wave, a sound born not in polished studios, but right there on the streets, forged in struggle and carried by voices that simply refuse to be silent. To really get what this movement is all about, you have to understand this one core idea. This quote, it says it all. For the artists who kicked this whole thing off, music wasn't just a career path or a hobby. No way. It was a lifeline. It was how you spoke your truth, how you processed the world, and honestly, how you survived when it felt like everything was closing in. So let's start where it all began. Our story kicks off on the street corners of townships like Khayelitsha. This is the birthplace of a sound called Spaza. And Spaza, well, it's the foundation for everything we now call the Xhosa wave. And the name itself, Spaza, that tells you so much. See, Spaza shops are those small, informal corner stores that are the lifeblood of the community. The music took that name because it served the exact same purpose. It was built from the ground up, by the people, for the people. You know, selling verses instead of bread and dishing out hope instead of cool drinks. And you gotta picture this. This wasn't about expensive equipment or fancy studios. In the early days, it was pure grit and resourcefulness. We're talking about artists using whatever they could get their hands on, banging on empty paint buckets for a beat, using the rhythm of the streets as their guide. It was raw, it was unfiltered, and it gave young Xhosa kids a powerful way to reclaim their language and tell their own stories. Now, every single movement has its pioneers, right? And back in the early days of Cape Town hip-hop, two incredible figures came up who would basically set the stage for everything that followed. And they represented two totally different sides of the same struggle. So on one side, you've got Pizzo TKG, who we're calling the architect, and on the other, Nkwikilidie, the outlaw. Think about it like this. One guy was building the house for artists to live in, while the other was painting a brutally honest picture of the world right outside the front door. Together, they are the soul and the grit of this whole scene. Nkwikilidie, man, he didn't just rap about the gangster life, he was that life. His lyrics were like a direct reflection of the violent reality of and in a sad, almost poetic way, the life he documented so vividly is the very one that ended up taking him. He was tragically stabbed, but his legacy, his influence as the city's father of gangster rap, you still hear those echoes today. And that just perfectly shows you the other side of the coin. Pizzo TKG was the quiet force working behind the scenes, building the actual stage. He's a true unsung hero. He's the one who put together the independent infrastructure, the makeshift studios, the connections, the community that gave the next generation a real shot, a true architect. So, this foundation of raw struggle and careful structure, it brings us to the real emotional heart of the movement. And that's this incredible ability to take personal pain and transform it into something powerful, something universal. 4. You're just looking at a number on a screen. But for one artist, this number tells a story of survival that really defines the whole resilient spirit of this movement. It's a constant, physical reminder of a life that was almost lost. That number 4, that's the number of scars left on the artist Aoife after she survived a shooting when she was just a kid. But that tragedy didn't break her, not even close. Instead, she channeled every single memory, every bit of that fear and that fight to survive, directly into her music. Her art became her proof of life. And you hear that same spirit in an artist like MDKRSA. His journey has been filled with so much struggle, facing things that would have shattered most people. But instead of giving in, he takes all that weight, all that doubt and loneliness, and he turns it into verses that are so raw and so deeply honest, you can't help but feel it. And then you have to talk about the late, great Bravo Loveroo. With his track Ta Bravo's interlude, he did something that was just incredibly brave. He completely dropped that tough guy persona that's so common in hip-hop. And what he gave us instead was this raw confession of his insecurities, his hunger, his fears. It was that vulnerability that made so many people connect with him on such a deep level. So this foundation of raw honesty and unbreakable resilience laid down by the pioneers and the survivors has paved the way for a whole new generation. Today, there's a new wave of artists who aren't just carrying on the legacy, man, they are rewriting the entire rulebook. Okay, let's talk about Xhosa. For years, the big industry players said rapping in pure isiXhosa just wasn't commercially viable. Well, Xhosa is proving every single one of them wrong.
By staying 100% true to his language and his roots, he's reaching a level of financial success that was just unthinkable for artists in the space before.
And this chart right here, it kind of lays it all out. The old way of doing things, it left Xhosa rappers with scraps. But Ma was independent hustle, really using digital streams, YouTube, direct media deals. He's showing everyone that your authenticity, when you own it, is your most valuable asset. It's the same thing with Yolanda Pani. She was so hesitant to even put her music out there. But after a little encouragement, she did. And her Xhosa songs just blew up on TikTok. She never changed her style, never watered down her language, and that real, genuine connection is exactly why millions of people started listening. And you absolutely cannot talk about this new wave without talking about Dee Kowala, the undisputed queen of Cape Town. Her move to Johannesburg is, well, it's a complicated story. It's a huge step up for her career, no doubt, but for her hometown, it's this bittersweet reminder that sometimes, to really grow and protect your crown, you have to leave the very place that made you. And the scene is just buzzing with talent right now. I mean, you've got lyrical technicians like BACE, a true wordsmith, the underdog with the sharpest pen out there. You have Nkosi Yamanuvale, who built a whole movement from scratch using hilarious smart TikToks and a real grassroots feel. And then you've got these brilliant strategists like Xhosa, who can take public opinion and his own insecurities and just flip them into this incredibly powerful, relatable brand. The list goes on. But all this new success brings up the ultimate challenge, doesn't it? The Xhosa wave is now standing at a crossroads, facing that timeless battle between keeping its cultural soul intact and chasing mainstream commercial success. So that begs the question, right? With all this insane talent, why isn't the Xhosa wave as huge as other South African genres like Amapiano? Well, the roadblocks are built into the system. Mainstream radio still sees Xhosa as a barrier. There's very little real investment from big labels. The scene is physically far from the industry center in Johannesburg. And honestly, it's often misunderstood, written off as too local or too rough for a national audience. And that really is the central paradox here. The movement's #1 greatest strength, that raw, unapologetic, unfiltered authenticity, is the exact same thing that makes it a tough sell for a mainstream industry that just wants polished, predictable, trend-chasing hits. Its biggest strength is also its biggest commercial hurdle. Which leaves us all with this one big question to think about. As the Xhosa wave gets more and more attention, as it finally starts to crash on the shores of the mainstream, can it hold on to that raw, authentic soul that made it so damn powerful in the first place? Only time's gonna tell.